All right, good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whenever you're getting around to doing some English 2 work. This is an exciting time for us, and unfortunately, Act 5, Scene 1 requires a lot of sword play. I guess I'll have to do all the sword work myself. This is a great opportunity for a little acting engagement, which is always what we typically do for Act 5, Scene 1 as we close out the story of Othello. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that this time around because of, a pandemic or such things as that nature. I hope you guys are all doing well. You're staying healthy. Take care of yourself and your family. But while you're home, it's important that we continue up with some of the learning that you guys were doing. And like I said, we were so close to finishing it in class as we're about to wrap up the Othello unit. And so we're going to get into Act 5, Scene 1 today, which is really a make or break act for a lot of our characters, life or death, you'd even go as far as to say. And we have to start considering our body count as we move into this scene. This is a tragedy. Shakespeare's tragic play of Othello is a tragedy, much like Romeo and Juliet, which means you have to consider a body count. At some point, the numbers start going. It took a long time for us to get to this point, but in order for it to truly be a tragedy and have these things like Othello's tragic flaw and his downfall play a role in this, some of the things that have been building and building up to this point, all of Iago's diabolical plans are going to start coming to a head here in the final act of the play. Just to recap real quick, in Act 4, Scene 2, Iago has a conversation with Rodrigo and ultimately gets him convinced that Cassio needs to die. And even though it's not something Rodrigo would typically do, it's something he feels compelled to do. And we're not exactly sure why, because he's not a fighter. He's not somebody who would be accustomed to life of having to take somebody's life, but he is compelled to do so, as he'll mention here early on in Act 5, Scene 1. And you're not really sure if Rodrigo realizes that part of the reason why he's maybe even willing to do something like this is because maybe he doesn't trust Iago. Maybe he's somewhat concerned about Iago as a threat, not wanting to cross him, which is reasonable. So, as we get into the play, open up to your books in page 254. That's where we're going to get rolling here with the first scene of Act 5. I did go ahead and post some questions for you guys to respond to with this. So after you watch this screencast and we go through a little bit of discussing what was going on, similar to what we do in class, make a point to go on there and answer those questions on the discussion post regarding Act 5, Scene 1. And that way you can feel like you have a pretty good understanding as we're closing out the final act of the play. But on page 254, you have Iago and Rodrigo having a conversation. And what I have for you is an incredible audio file. They do a great job with some great actors doing some great voice work. Game respect game for sure. They do a wonderful job, and so hopefully you can capture the essence of the conversations that are taking place in this audio version. So what I'll do is I'm going to play it as you're following along, and I'm going to stop periodically every now and again, just like we would in class, to kind of discuss a couple of things that are happening to clarify some of the things based on our modern translation in our book as well. Okay, so let's get to it. On page 254, let's begin with Scene 1, Iago and Rodrigo having another conversation late at night, which this has happened a couple of times, and every time it happens, they're up to no good. Let's see where they're at here.
Act 5, Scene 1, a street in Cyprus at night. Enter Iago and Rodrigo.
Here, stand behind this bulk. Straight will he come. Wear thy good rapier bare and put it home. Quick, quick. Fear nothing. I'll be at thy elbow. It makes us or it mars us. Think on that, and fix most firm thy resolution.
Be near at hand, I may miscarry, and
Here, at thy hand. Be bold, and take thy stand.
Notice that Rodrigo doesn't sound too confident here. I may miscarry in it. He's already afraid that he's going to mess this whole thing up, again, because this is not something he's accustomed to. And it should sound familiar the way Iago's talking here. I'll be at thy elbow. Don't worry, I'll be right there to help you out. Just like he was in Act 1, Scene 1, when he was outside Brabantio's house. Whenever things start to get messy, you can count on Iago dipping out real quick. Let's see how this one goes.
Iago moves into the darkness. Roderigo positions himself in his hiding place.
I have no great devotion to the deed, and yet he hath given me satisfying reasons. 'Tis but a man gone. Forth my sword, he dies.
From the shadows, Iago speaks.
I have rubbed this young quat almost to the sense that he grows angry. Now, whether he kills Cassio or Cassio him, or each two kill the other, every way makes my gain. Live, Roderigo. He calls me to a restitution large of gold and jewels that I bobbed from him as gifts to Desdemona. Must not be. If Cassio do remain, he hath a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. And besides, the more may unfold me to him, there I stand in much peril. No, he must die. But so, I hear him coming.
Okay, so just a couple of things real quick in this short little aside by Iago. You get the sense here that he's really kind of depending on this to go well. That if Rodrigo kills Cassio, that's great. That would be great. If they killed each other, oh, that'd be perfect. Because if Rodrigo's alive, then he still has to find a way to make things right with Rodrigo. And there's really no way to do that. He doesn't want to pay him back, and he knows he's not going to get Desdemona. So what's going to come of that? But Cassio dying is really kind of important to keep this thing going as well. Again, remember, he can't let Cassio and Othello have a conversation. It just wouldn't work out. So he has to make sure that this goes well. Now, the reasons why he wants to kill Cassio, again, there was always some reasons. He had the position he wanted. Well, now he has it. All right, Iago got that position. Well, Cassio might have slept with Amelia. Well, we don't have any proof of that, but that was his reason long enough. But what he mentions here on line 18 is really important. If Cassio do remain, he hath a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. So the idea of wanting to destroy Cassio simply because that there's something good about him, that he's just a good person, that there's something about his life, whether it's his looks, whether it's his mannerisms, whatever it is, it just makes him feel bad about himself. All the good that's in Cassio brings out the worst in Iago. It makes him feel inferior. And so if nothing else, he must die for that. Again, brings more reasons as to why he has to justify the actions he takes. In reality, we don't even know if he needs a reason to do these things, but you do see the jealousy he feels towards Cassio here, which is really important. So Cassio is strolling out from Bianca's house. Remember, he knew he was having dinner with Bianca, and he's set him up here. He's lying in the wait, having Rodrigo waiting to pop out and take advantage of Cassio when he's least expecting it.
Enter Cassio.
I know his gait. 'Tis he. Villain, thou diest!
Roderigo slashes at Cassio.
Ha! That thrust had been my enemy indeed. But that my coat is better than thou knowst, I will make proof of thine.
Cassio draws his sword and wounds Roderigo.
Oh, I am slain.
Iago wounds Cassio and quickly leaves.
I am maimed forever. Help! Oh, murder! Murder!
Okay, so a couple of things here. There's a lot of action. This would take place over, I'd say, maybe 10 seconds or so on stage at the Globe Theater. And you would really get a handle on what kind of action is really taking place. But when Rodrigo pops out to surprise attack on Cassio, he mentions here that he's got like a coat of armor on, something that is a little bit more heavily crafted to prepare against a glancing blow from a sword. So Rodrigo didn't stand a chance there. So Cassio is able to return fire on him, or return action on him, right? And so he thrusts at him with his sword and actually wounds Rodrigo. Why? Well, he's a soldier. He's trained to fight. Whereas Rodrigo doesn't have any training for something like this. And he says, "I am slain," which is a great line. It's typical Shakespeare line right there. Is that when someone's dying, they have to say it all dramatically. "Oh, God! Oh! Oh! I am slain." So he is wounded. He is definitely wounded here. Iago's got to be thinking, holy crap, could this be any worse? Could things be going any worse? He has to pop out of the shadows here. That's something he has to do because things are going so poorly. Here's Rodrigo, the guy who was supposed to kill Cassio, and he's going to just bleed out if he just doesn't do anything. So he pops out and right behind him takes his sword and slashes one time at Cassio and actually catches him like around the back of his leg area, enough to maybe, rupture an artery. And so he is wounded. And so both men will collapse here in the street in the dark. And Iago is thinking, wow, you send Rodrigo in to do something. You can never count on this guy to get it right. I mean, what was he really thinking? Obviously, he's been kind of a moron the whole time. While that's happening, somewhere a little further on the stage, maybe it would play out perhaps like on a balcony. This would be happening near the governor's mansion. Othello would actually appear on stage and be able to make a couple of statements here. He hears the fight that's going on here, hears the yelling that's taking place in the street late at night, and it invigorates him.
Othello enters, some way off at night.
The voice of Cassio. Iago keeps his word.
Oh, villain that I am!
It is even so.
Oh! Help! Oh! Knight! A surgeon!
Is he? Oh, brave Iago, honest and just, that hath such noble sense of thy friend's wrong.
Man, that irony is just deep right there. He is so wrong. He is so wrong. Not just in his assumption as to what happened there at night, because obviously he has the scene totally wrong, but his trust of Iago, of course, he is just brutally mistaken here.
Thou teachest me. Minion, your dear lies dead, and your unblessed fate hies. Strumpet, I come. Forth of my heart those charms thine eyes are blotted. Thy bed, lust-stained, shall with lust blood be spotted.
So you get the idea here that he is going to take advantage of this proof, right? Proof that Iago has done his part, so now he has to go take care of his. Iago's killed Cassio. It's time for Desdemona to die.
Othello leaves. Lodovico and Graziano enter.
What? Oh! No watch! No passage! Murder! Murder!
No one's coming.
'Tis some mischance. The voice is very direful.
Oh! Help!
Hark!
Oh, wretched villain!
2 or 3 groan. It is a heavy night. These may be counterfeits. Let's think it unsafe to come into the cry without more help.
Nobody come? Then shall I bleed to death?
Hark!
Here's one comes in his shirt with light and weapons.
Someone's here to save the day.
Iago enters with a light.
Oh, it's Iago.
Who's there? Whose noise is this that cries on murder?
We do not know.
Did you not hear a cry?
Here, for heaven's sake, help me!
What's the matter?
This is Othello's ancient, as I take it.
The same indeed. A very valiant fellow.
Very
What
valuable.
are you that cry so grievously? Iago? Oh, I am spoiled, undone by villains. Give me some help.
Lodovico moves toward the voice. Iago lowers the torch and they see Cassio lying in a pool of blood.
Oh, me, Lieutenant! What villains have done this? I think one of them is hereabout and cannot make away. Treacherous villains! What are you there? Come in and give some help.
Oh, help me here!
That's one of them. Oh, a slave. Oh, villain!
Iago stabs Roderigo.
And Iago. Oh, inhuman dog.
Okay, so what you have here is really Rodrigo's final lines in the play. Not only is he, of course, going to pay gravely for his mistake in trusting Iago, but he lives just long enough to realize that Iago has taken advantage of him. His final lines there on line 64, oh, damned Iago, oh, inhuman dog, the first person who actually sees him. Not as honest Iago, not as valiant Iago, the valiant ancient, but in this case, calling him what he is. That he is damned, that he is evil. And he realizes it, of course, all too late. You get the idea here with the two gentlemen, Lodovico and Graziano, who are here and they are able to kind of see what's going on in the situation now that Iago has come to save the day. You get the idea that perhaps if they weren't around, maybe this would have gone very differently. Iago goes and he finishes the job with Rodrigo. By killing him, he really can't talk and say anything. But it makes you wonder how he would have handled Cassio if there weren't any witnesses too.
Kill men in the dark? Where be these bloody thieves? How silent is this town? Oh! Murder! Murder! What may you be? You of good or evil?
As you shall prove us, praise us.
Signor Lodovico,
He, sir.
I cry you mercy. Is Cassio hurt by villains? Cassio? How is brother? My leg is cut in two. Marry, heaven forbid. Light, gentlemen! I'll bind it with my shirt.
Bianca enters.
What is the matter? Who is that cried?
Who is that cried?
Oh, my dear Cassio. My sweet Cassio. Oh, Cassio, Cassio, Cassio.
Oh, notable strumpet. Cassio, may you suspect who they should be that have thus mangled you?
Now, notice the way that Iago talks to Bianca, who we've discussed as of last week. Obviously, she is a prostitute. But notice that word strumpet. That word was just mentioned by Othello when talking about Desdemona. And it's interesting here to notice how similar their language is. By Act 5 of this play, they sound identical. Their personalities are identical. The way they speak to women is identical. In this case, the way Iago addresses Bianca, a prostitute, is the same way that Othello talks about his wife, Desdemona. So just something to pick up here on the language. But notice here that Bianca was close enough by. So get the idea just geographically. Obviously, this happened close enough to her house. This would be waking up people who are nearby and hear the noise and the yelling of murder and people calling for help. And she is concerned, right? Because, we've talked about this as well. She really loves and cares about Cassio. But one of the first things you'll notice is Iago has a way of flipping things. His tone and his word choice here really starts to vilify Bianca. He's trying to cast some sort of suspicion on her, for sure.
No, I am sorry to find you thus. I have been to seek you. Lend me a garter. So call for a chair to bear him easily hence.
Alas, he faints.
Bianca falls to her knees and gently hugs and cradles him to her.
Oh, Cassio, Cassio, Cassio!
Gentlemen all, I do suspect this trash to be party in this injury. Patience a while, good Cassio. Come, lend me a light. Know me this face or no? Alas, my friend and my dear countryman Rodrigo? No, yes. Sure, oh heaven, Rodrigo. What, of Venice? Even he, sir. Did you know him? Know him? Aye, Signor Graziano. I cry your gentle pardon. These bloody accidents must excuse my manners that so neglected you. I am glad to see you. How do you, Cassio? Oh, a chair! Rodrigo? Tis he.
All right, so a couple of things here. Notice how Iago finds a way to take this opportunity to distance himself. Obviously, it looks really good to Lodovico and Graziano. Take charge, brave, handling of Cassio wanting to be helpful, all of those things. So when he talks, it's going to carry some sort of weight. One of the things he does here right off the bat is he actually starts to place blame on Bianca. He calls her trash, says that she must be party to this injury, that clearly there is some sort of connection between the injury of Cassio and his prostitute friend. So that obviously does not look good for Bianca. But then he also starts to distance himself from Rodrigo. Oh my gosh, it's Rodrigo of Venice. Oh, how did this happen? It's so strange. Now that Rodrigo can't speak up for himself, he can use that to kind of distance himself, almost creating an alibi or, something of that nature, so that as to never cast any doubt on his character.
A chair is brought in.
Oh, that's well said, the chair. Some good men bear him carefully from hence. I'll fetch the general surgeon. For you, mistress, save you your labour. He that lies slain here, Cassio, was my dear friend. What malice was there between you? None in the world, nor do I know the man. What, look you pale? I'll bear him out of the air. Stay you, good gentleman.
Cassio is taken away.
Look you pale, mistress? Do you perceive the ghastness of her eye? Nay, if you stare, we shall hear more anon. Behold her well, I pray you, look upon her. Do you see, gentlemen? Nay, guiltiness will speak, though tongues were out of use.
So interestingly, noticing how Bianca is acting here, he mentions how she looks pale, how she isn't talking, how there's some sort of issues with her eyes. Perhaps she's upset, mentioning that they should keep a close eye on her. That even though she's not talking, she seems to be at a loss of words. He's using that against her. Obviously, these are all things that show that maybe she's concerned about Cassio, but he's using this as a way of making her look guilty. And because he's Iago, now Othello's lieutenant, and he's somebody who took charge of the situation, he's likely to be believed, which is kind of scary.
Emilia enters.
Lass, what's the matter? What's the matter, husband?
Cassio hath here been set on in the dark by Rodrigo and fellows that escaped. He's almost slain, and Rodrigo dead.
Alas, good gentleman! Alas, good Cassio!
This is the fruits of whoring.
That's an interesting line. This is the fruits of whoring. Even though Iago clearly knows that that's not the reason why Cassio is stabbed, he says this to Emilia and says this out loud in front of them. And it's a great way of really putting down Cassio. Imagine if you're Lodovico and you hear this, and it's a way of saying like, oh, that's what you get when you mess around with prostitutes. Really kind of belittling Cassio here, as if like he deserves this. Again, we know that that's not why he's been stabbed and attacked, but it casts doubt on Cassio's character. Is this another motive of Iago's? Does he want him to suffer because he would bother with a prostitute? I don't know, but it's an interesting thing that he mentions here because it just shows more justification from Iago's eyes. Like he had this coming because he spends time with somebody like Bianca.
Prithee, Emilia, don't know of Cassio where he supped tonight. What? Do you shake at that?
He supped at my house, but I therefore shake not.
Oh, did he? So I charge you, go with me.
Oh, fie upon thee, strumpet! I am no strumpet, but of life as honest as you that thus abuse me. As I? Foe, fie upon thee!
Kind gentlemen, let's go see poor Cassio dressed. Come, mistress, you must tell us another tale. Emilia, run you to the citadel and tell my lord and lady what hath happed. Will you go on afore?
Everyone leaves.
This is the night that either makes me or foredoes me quite.
And that is the end of scene 1. It's an incredible line there. This is the night that either makes me or fordoes me quite. He knows he's all in now. There's no turning around for Iago. He's fully invested. Rodrigo is now dead. And that first number on the body count list is actually at the hands of Iago. He's the one that takes care of it. And like we mentioned, obviously Rodrigo realizes a little too late that that wasn't his friend at all. But earlier on here on this page here, you notice the interaction between Bianca and Emilia. And that's one of the last things I want to talk about today because it's interesting. Emilia seems to really kind of beef up her attack on Bianca as well, taking kind of a page from her husband's book here. She can tell that Iago is upset with Bianca, so she kind of mimics it a little bit. And it just shows the power that Iago still has over Emilia. That when if he says something, she's going to follow it. In this case, he actually does give her orders as well. Go to the citadel and tell my lord and lady what had happened. You know, just go stop by and check in on Othello and Desdemona. What's the worst that could happen there, right? I wonder what she might stumble upon. Exactly. So, as you can tell, Iago is actually taking the attack on Cassio, now that he hasn't died, unfortunately for Iago, and really kind of pinning it on Bianca just because of her lack of credibility. But notice Bianca, a very small character in this play, is very willful. And we talked earlier last week about willful female characters, and this play is loaded with them. And Bianca, even though she's a small character, she won't be pushed around. She's not hiding from anything. Iago is trying to blame her, and she is not scared of this. She is not afraid to admit that they were together, because obviously she knows she's innocent. But it's just an interesting little interaction here at the end. And of course, Iago, knowing as we head into this final scene that it's all or nothing now. It's really, the whole plan is going to follow accordingly. And even though there's been some variation, as long as a few other things go as planned, he can still walk away with the things that he's set out and to have, including the position and ultimately the destruction of Othello. And we'll have to follow on more tomorrow to see how the play ends. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it so far. Hopefully you guys are staying healthy. Again, look for those questions here in the e-learning folder for today and answer those, submit those online, and we will pick up with more tomorrow as we close it out. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.